Monster Party was released in 1989 for the NES, and only released in North America. There is a Japanese prototype out there. It was auctioned off in the early 2000s. There's a little bit of debate as to whether or not it was actually the real game or not. And it's just one of those cool oddities. The game was released online and also cleaned up later on, so it's out there online if you really want to see the Japanese version and see just how much was actually cut by Nintendo's censors. The fact that the game made it through in its current form from Nintendo's censors is absolutely amazing because they got so much stuff in there that was just totally against Nintendo of America's style at that time. Nintendo normally censored blood, they censored like excessive violence, they censored religious symbols, and you get just within the first like few minutes once you actually start the level, it goes absolutely insane. Even the story is weird because you're this guy named Mark, and you got a baseball bat and this weird demon thing, which kind of looks like a Power Rangers character, comes down and says, "You're coming to the monster world with me," or the Dark World, I believe it's called. "And we're gonna fight demons." And you're doing this with a fucking baseball bat, which is an awful weapon, by the way. It does not work very well in the game. Anyway, let's check this thing out because this is a really cool game for Halloween. So there are a total of 8 levels in Monster Party. At least I think there are a total of 8 levels. I did not make it to all of them. Now, some of the monsters and the bosses, those are based on both American and Japanese horror, including both pop culture and folklore. It's kind of a cool mix, and it really works well for this game because the game is just absolutely insane, especially right off the bat. So you can see here in the intro, you're Mark, you're walking down the street, and you notice a crazy star up in the sky. It falls down, and it turns out to be this weird monster named Bert. I have no idea why they chose the name Bert, but they did, and it just adds to the weirdness of this entire game. So Bert tells you that you need to go to the monster world and help him fight, and you can use your bat, because he thinks that's somehow going to be a nice effective weapon against monsters, and hell, it turns out to actually be that. And then Bert decides, hey, let's fuse together to make sure that you're going to be okay. That's a nice, simple synopsis of the plot. And yeah, it's really kind of fun, and it just adds to the weirdness of it. So as I mentioned earlier, like, some of what goes on here was edited for copyright concerns. But not this screen. I don't know why. This screen was okay for 1989, and Nintendo's, we want to be family friendly. Let's just throw a bunch of skeletons and blood and everything. So you can find random pills that allow you to switch between Mark and Bert, which is pretty awesome because Mark has a really short-range attack, Bert has a longer-range attack, and he can just fly over these wonderful, weird monsters that you have to deal with. So yeah, you've got these weird glowing guys, and then you've got like legs that are just kind of sticking out. So here's what's kind of an eggplant, but I think it's more like a Venus flytrap. At least that's kind of what it looks like now that I look at it. And it was supposed to be the Little Shop of Horrors monster. It's not overly complicated to beat, but it can be a little bit annoying. And then you can kind of see here where they did cover up some of the other stuff with just a black box. Instead of just removing the artwork, they decided to cover it up with that weird black box. There's also a microphone in there as well. And then you get to weird monsters like this that just tell you that they're dead. It's just a weird thing. There's another one later on where the monsters just say, watch us dance, you watch them dance, and then that's it. You don't actually have to fight them. Here's where the game just like totally flips.
It goes from a somewhat family-friendly thing to hell. It just... I don't think there's another NES game that really looks this way. It's just absolutely bizarre. Now, there's enough challenge around in this game to make it pretty fun. Like, I never felt like I was getting cheated in any way. And it just kind of keeps everything going, and it's a really nice mix of gameplay. The flying controls are a little bit weird at first, but you eventually get used to them. I do kind of wish that Bert had a longer range with his weapon, and I kind of wish that, you could see the enemy boss's hit points, because that would kind of make this a little bit better to play. No, it's just, I cannot overstate the fact that all the blood in the skulls and the creepy faces in the background, and whatever the hell that human-faced dog thing was supposed to be, it just adds to really bizarre atmosphere for this game. It's a lot of fun, and it's incredibly weird at the same time.
I didn't learn about Monster Party until really the early 2000s, once I actually had a job and I had a lot of disposable income because I was in high school, and I got into video game collecting. This one was so weird for me to play because I'm like, this is not an NES game. This is more like a Sega Genesis game than it is a Nintendo game. But it was just one of those cool things where it's like, okay, I found this weird gem in the NES library. Let's see what else I can find. And like I said earlier, you normally only find this crazy stuff with the unreleased game, or the unlicensed game, sorry, where they could just do anything because Nintendo wasn't looking at them, and honestly, they really weren't too worried about them because a lot of those smaller companies folded. Now, it's just so cool when you look at this stuff and you get the backstory for this game. It's just one of those things that's like, oh my god, I want to dive deeper into the library and find more of the crazy stuff that's going on there. Now let's talk a little bit more about this game's legacy. And it's a weird one, especially for a retro game, because normally you don't really see a lot of these things where people find the game and they find the original source code with the prototype that I was talking about earlier, and they're like, we want to restore this thing and figure out exactly what Nintendo cut out of it. And when you find that out, it's like, holy crap, how did they really even do a lot of this stuff? Because a lot of the pop culture references from horror movies that were made in the 80s and stuff like that, they had to be taken out of this game, because you have Little Shop of Horrors in there. You've got a few other ones. You've got just absolutely insane stuff where they're like, okay, we need to get this stuff out of here and we need to clean it up. The most obvious one is the eggplant that you fight early on, where it's supposed to be the fly trap from Little Shop of Horrors. It's just a minor thing, but it's still really crazy. And honestly, I feel like Nintendo's censors just ran out of energy on this game, where they're like, you know what, screw it. Just let the blood and all the skulls show up. It's fine. Nobody's gonna care. It's just so cool when you look at this game. You're like, holy shit, how did they get this stuff through? I'm sorry I'm nerding out on this, but it's just amazing that they got so much stuff through the censors. So anyway, guys, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode. Sorry it was a little weird, and I hope you guys are still liking the Halloween atmosphere. Please let me know if you hate this and I'll knock it off. There is actually going to be another episode of Talking Pixels. We're going to do 2 more Halloween episodes. I decided earlier I've got enough time, I can knock another one out. So there will be another episode next week, and then the Silent Hill episode at the very end. Anyway, have a great day, guys, and happy Halloween.